2 months ago, it felt like a lock that Jadeveon Clowney was going to be back with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't feel that way anymore. We'll explain why next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're discussing Jadeveon Clowney, the Cowboys veteran edge rusher who is set to become a free agent in the next couple of days. Landon, I would have said a month ago, 2 weeks ago, I thought it was a lock that Clowney would be back on this team. But after listening to Stephen Jones talk at the NFL Combine, I don't feel quite the same.
Well, I think we got to examine exactly what happened in those 2 months, right? I think obviously the inciting factor that changed all of our minds is the hiring of Christian Parker, and I think that is probably the situation as well with the Joneses. I just think that when you look at Jadeveon Clowney and the role he serves, he was very much a typical strong side 4-3 defensive end, like a six tech, 7 technique guy that is gonna, be big against the run. And for the Cowboys, he actually, I think he ended up being our leading sacker, if I'm not mistaken, last year, or at least he was tied. Yeah. So, I think he obviously was a little over performative of what we thought that he was going to be. And I think part of the thought process and going into the offseason was, hey, maybe we re-sign him and get him in a little bit earlier so we could get him through a whole season of that. And I think that the changes in the defense and the kind of roles that the edges are going to be playing specifically is where the angles change, right? You just don't have a need necessarily that is I'll rephrase this. The need for having that body type is not as pronounced as it was in the previous defense. So I wouldn't be completely shocked if the Cowboys did end up signing Jadeveon Clowney at some point. If that happened, I think what's changed is that because the defense style changed, the need to go out and get this specific body type has been greatly lessened. And so going out to specifically get Jadeveon Clowney has also kind of evaporated. Even if you like him a lot, I think you're probably, expanded your search of what kind of edge player you're going to look for. And the body type has been opened up a little bit. So I think you're going to go and shop in the larger bucket to see if you can get maybe a better player or a younger player. And then if you need someone a little bit later on that kind of fits that role, maybe you circle back with Jadeveon Clowney later on closer to the season.
I think that's probably what happened. Like if I had to put money on it, I think that's what happened. I think we also heard from Jadeveon Clowney that, he wanted to be here, with the Cowboys, he wanted to resign. And that sounds really good in November and December. And then you go to Cancun, it's like, man, this weather's great. Not practicing is really nice. And then you go to Pro Football Reference and you look at his transaction log and you see signed with the Cowboys on September 14th, 2025, signed with the Ravens on August 18th, 2023, signed with the Browns in the summer of 2022. Maybe this guy just doesn't want to be in mini camps and OTAs that often in off-season workouts. And, he's kind of told the Cowboys, hey, I'd like to resign, but let's revisit this in a couple months.
To be fair, we got all of this from you, Jadeveon. That was the funny thing is that it was Jadeveon who volunteered you're not wrong. First of all, you're not wrong. I wouldn't be shocked at all if that was the case, but it would be ironic because again, it was Jadeveon who, volunteered the information. You know what? Maybe I'll come into training camp a little bit earlier this year so I can get going a little bit earlier. So listen,
that sounds like people, hey,
that sounds like someone who's not in Cancun to me.
Once January 1st gets here, then I'm going to start going to the gym, right? And then January 1st is here. It's like, let's put this off for another month or so.
Yeah.
Again,
New Year's resolution didn't take.
This is all reckless speculating. So please do not hold us to it.
Of course.
Very well, it could just be Christian Parker wants guys that are a little bit smaller and they can play in space. But what's ironic is that a lot of Jadeveon Clowney's best work has come in defenses that are very multiple. Played in Cleveland that had a 3-4 defense. Played in Baltimore that was very multiple. So this shouldn't be anything new for him.
No, and again, I don't think that it's like he suddenly becomes completely invaluable to the
No,
Cowboys.
no.
I just think that the need to go get this type of player has been eliminated. So this type of body type player, he's just a rare version of this
Correct.
body type, right? So I think that it just opens you up to more options. And now that you have more options, maybe there's somebody better who is more willing to come into training camp because they're obligated because they got drafted, or you signed them to a deal sooner.
All right, so let's say that Clowney doesn't resign here in the next couple of weeks. Who are some potential replacements? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position that you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the right people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium status that it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. This episode is brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is always a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan always makes a big difference, and that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering pre-portioned, fresh ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. And for a limited time only, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off their first box with free shipping and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box with free shipping and free dessert for life. You must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Have you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. And here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win a trip to the NBA Finals for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole thing. Go to the NBA Finals, have a bunch of fun. And if you're already looking at the board and thinking about which teams could make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. So visit FanDuel.com to get started and use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We're discussing potential replacements for Jadeveon Clowney, assuming he doesn't resign. Who do you got, Landon?
Well, we talked about some of the more top-end guys, right? And on the show today, we even talked about bringing back Fowler on a deal, probably very similar to what you saw Clowney getting. So what if we looked a little bit further down the list at maybe some guys who aren't necessarily going to break the bank guys, but maybe can come in and give you some – because here's the thing. I tend to think that the Cowboys need to draft a guy at the edge position, right? So I think what your plan probably is to cobble this together with at least 2 free agents and a draft pick at the edge position.
Yes,
and that's how you're going to get together, just because you have numbers that you need at this point. So I think you're probably looking for someone in the $5 to $7 million range, right? Just to kind of give you some stability. So could a guy like, that's traditionally been a little bit undersized at some of these spots, like Arden Key or Caleb Von Chason, like, could they be guys that potentially might be better fits. Or if you're looking for someone who is still maybe a bigger bodied guy who is a veteran, Leonard Floyd is a guy that I don't necessarily love as my number 2 all the time, but I think he could come in and give you really solid snaps, especially on early downs, and be someone who doesn't get you beat. Qadim Muhammad, who was a former Dallas Cowboy, who I think, every single time this guy gets an opportunity, he does something, it seems like, but he just can't seem to stick on teams. So maybe you sign him for a 1-year deal or something like that. And then I think you got to look at the kind of closer to, we talked about, Sam Williams on the show is someone like in that range, right? Could you go out and get Ogbonna Okoronkwo from the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was this is the old Oklahoma player, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct.
The kind of undersized pass rushers. I mean, again, kind of right up the alley of what you're looking for, as understood, because he was at Philadelphia. We already talked about Uche and Ojulari as well. I think those guys kind of fit into this, $1 to $3 million range for these guys. So I think that you got to get a couple of these guys in free agency at different tiers, and then probably one in the draft as well.
I think they're going to get 2 veteran edge rushers, and I think one is going to be in that $7 to $11 million range. And you mentioned some of the names, and maybe they go more. Maybe they try to get a Khalil Mack or a Joey Bosa. But I think they're also going to be in the market for what they got last year in Jadeveon Clowney, which is like a 1-year, $2.5 million contract. And I think like a name who I've mentioned a couple of times, Kyle Van Noy, who plays really well on the edge as a run-stopping guy who can drop into coverage. Doesn't offer you a ton as a pass rusher, but could be the number 4 guy that plays on a lot of, base downs. I think there are going to be guys out there like that available. You mentioned Leonard Floyd, but I think it's going to be 2 veteran pass rushers, a draft player, hopefully in round 1, Donovan Ezeraku, and then you use your depth at defensive tackle. You maybe use more of Solomon Thomas on the edge. Maybe Perrion Winfrey plays more snaps on the edge to at least get you by this season.
Yeah, and pass rush is also going to be supplemented by blitzing. There's going to be more sim pressures and that sort of stuff. So there's going to be more blitzing happening, whether it's called a blitz or not. More bodies that are not pass rushers attacking the quarterback this year.
That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Go check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Get you guys ready for the NFL Combine. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you guys right back here tomorrow.